Okay, so hi everyone. Today then I'm going to be talking a bit about self-sufficiency and sustainability and the importance of gardens in the community. I've been living at Eco Village Bruggerania for 15 years, where over that time I've been learning how to manage the farm, the gardens. My other interests have been beekeeping. And together with my wife Asha, we grow medicinal herbs in the garden and collect medicinal herbs from the wild. And we give workshops on how to make folk remedies, and also we sell those herbs as well. So that's my main roles in the community. I also have a family, with 2 children, and a business as well, a private business. So I'm going to just talk in general terms at the beginning, and then I will apply self-sufficiency to what I've learned in the community and share that with you. If at any time I'm talking too fast, please say, and I'll welcome any questions at the end or during if you don't understand anything. Yeah. Thank you. So, and just out of interest, I was also born and lived most of my life, my young life, in cities. So I'm not naturally from the countryside. So I had to learn, these past 15 years, I've learned most of what I've had to learn there. And I think that's quite common for people who start communities, who join communities as well. One plus is that you're actually used to, you're more open to maybe adopting new techniques, permaculture techniques, biodynamic techniques, and whatever. Whereas, sometimes a traditional farmer may be a bit reticent and harder to maybe try those. So that's often quite common, I find. So, self-sufficiency. Probably our grandfathers, great-grandfathers, or sometimes fathers, depending on which country you're in, self-sufficiency was normally a necessity. It was during the Great War and the wars, and shortly after that, there was a necessity for growing food. There wasn't much food around. So that was the impulse and propulsion for being self-sufficient in those days. And every inch of land was basically put to production. And then what happened? Around sort of 1950, and then into the 60s and 70s, was what was called the Green Revolution, and sort of a sense of prosperity that was sold to us. And suddenly the vegetables were shiny and they were nice and they looked great. They would look beautiful looking crops, and these crops just flooded the market. And people's lives became more occupied with full-time jobs. And as the prices of food dropped, it just became easier to buy these foods and to support yourself through that, not growing them anymore. And farms grew in size to feed the population. And so we got big, huge farms. And we were sold a vision of the future that was looked bright and prosperous at that time. And then, of course, industrial farming. And it was kind of like a promised utopia in those days that was built up. But this promised utopia was kind of like a dream sold to us, not because there was a care for the health of the people, let's say, and the happiness of the people, but more because it supported a huge agricultural and industrial industry. And today, the costs of such a system are plain to see in our health and the destruction of biodiversity and the environment. We've got the use of synthetic fertilizers has destroyed the living balance of the soil, so that crops have less nutritional value when we eat the food now. The pesticides are being sprayed on the crops. The residues that go into through the skin of the plant and through the roots also go into the food, and we're eating those. And so now it's, all combined with the pollution of the food and the atmosphere, where the estimates are that 1 in 3 people would get cancer in their lifetime. So it's not a very happy picture at the moment. And then on top of that, the affected environment, we have the runoff of agricultural waste, synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, which is polluting the waterways. We have the reliance on oil, coal and nuclear power, which has given millions and millions, electricity, but at a huge cost to the environment. I know we all know this. I'm just trying to paint a picture of what we're offered normally, what we're living in. So, and then on top of that, many people have long work hours, and the family unit has become a bit disruptive. There's greater stress and more social unhappiness. The growing number of health-related problems in the world is a symptom of our reliance on these destructive industries that supply our basic needs: electricity, food, water, and economy. So, as many of us have felt and been witnessing, there's a growing movement for change. So, whereas in the past self-sufficiency was the spur for it was necessity, food, now it's more really because there's a growing awakening and movement towards a more self-sufficient and sustainable lifestyle. And this is born out of a choice to stop supporting these unethical and destructive industries and to improve the physical, social, and spiritual values of our lives. So many people are now, as we have seen, going more towards starting small communities. I love this picture. We got, ooh, yay! Ooh, yay! So that's the general feeling. From what I've noticed, from my own personal experience, when I wanted to join the community, it's hard to explain, but when I looked at around the world, of course, I just saw the craziness of the energy industry, of the pharmaceutical industry, the economic banking, the media, everything that was being sold. And for me, it just made so much sense starting a community. I felt it very deep in my bones, in my heart, that's what was necessary. That was a positive way for the future. So that's why I joined this community, because it was more of a life with heart. And I think that is also the spur that many people are having now for starting small communities. So self-sufficiency. Is it a realistic goal, really, then, for small communities to become 100% self-sufficient? It would be nice to believe that we can be 100% sufficient. And people have been doing it, communes and alternative people have been trying since the 60s, mostly, the hippie movements and everything, to be 100% self-sufficient. And most of them have come to realization, actually, it is quite unrealistic, really. To be 100%, even to grow most of your food is hard. To even make your own clothes is very hard. Growing cotton, making your own clothes, creating energy for yourself is also, we all rely on some kind of system, something else to make our life a little bit easier. So communities have started to use now the term self-reliance as opposed to self-sufficiency. And self-reliance really is describing more sustainable module where we, as a community, we try to produce as much food and energy as possible, sustainably. Make sure we have, we create an economy for ourselves. And then we interact with the outside community, but being selective about who we do our business sharing or exchanging with. So actually, self-sufficiency is quite isolating in a way. It can be looked at quite isolating, where you want to take yourself away from society and just isolate yourself, do as much as you can yourself. Whereas self-reliance is more about sharing, interacting. Maybe there's a farm down the road, organic farm, who have grown grain, and you have 100 jars of apples or whatever, baskets of apples, and you can do an exchange. So it's actually creating networks now, and between people. We're sharing, it's interconnected. In the same way we may choose to actually before maybe the goal might be to be 100% self-sufficient in energy ultimately. But in the meantime, we may just decide to use less electricity, more efficient light bulbs, and try and get our electricity from sources that do it cleanly, from windmill energy and things like that. And then ultimately we can go on to self-sufficiency. So these are all steps that we can take. It's a process to get to being as self-reliable and self-reliant as we can, which can take a lot of pressure off a small community, knowing that if I can make some extra economy, some extra money, somehow, if the community can or individual people can, then that can be used also to bring into the community things that are needed, that are lacking in being self-sufficient. Yeah. Of course, I mean, if there are other areas where if you can make your own clothes, weave and make your own, rugs, you can, any other area that you can become more self-sufficient, bake your own bread, that's all great. It's, the more the merrier. But I think sometimes to be, we always ran around with the pressure, like we had to be 100% self-sufficient, as much as possible. And I think this module is more sustainable and also more inclusive and really creates a community that can branch out outwards. So here is our eco-village. You've probably seen a bit of aerial. Let me just show you a bit. Here we have our vegetable garden and some culinary herbs that we grow in this area here, the spiral, well, circle. And down here is the medicinal herb garden as well. And we have our orchard here, which is an apple and plum orchard, and some pears as well. We have greenhouses here. Here actually we have worms which are eating away at the fertilizer compost. And the fields over here are pasture fields for cow grazing, and up here as well. And then, so all this land here is foundation land, is communal land that we all use and help grow vegetables and help in the gardens. And over here are a couple of individual houses. And actually our makeup is that this house here, which is owned by Ulrich from Germany, he lives there. That's on his private land. My house here is on my private land. So that's my house, basically, my house. And this is all communal. So, so that's kind of the makeup of our community that we have. And from that, we produce food for ourselves. In our gardens, we're 100% organic. And to become, it's a great idea when starting a small community to have a master plan of what your ultimate goal is. And it's good to come back to that every now and again, just so that you can see how far you've advanced, and just to remind yourselves of that goal of how self-sufficient you want to be. For example, in our community, we have a plan of being, 80%, let's say, self-sufficient in food. Ideally 100%, but we'll be realistic and say 80%. So that involves growing grain, foods that can be stored, root crops, drying food, and things like that. So I'm going to go through some things here. So these are our vegetable gardens. Here, as you can see, everything's growing very well, with the effect of Agnihotra as well. It has a very good effect on the gardens, on the plants. These tomatoes down here, most people in our area have to use a lot of chemicals in growing tomatoes because of the problem with disease, blight. It's this fungal disease that turns the leaves dark. But we don't have any problem with that, thankfully. We used intensive raised bed methods in the garden. We get our compost and manure from the cows and also from kitchen waste and from waste of the garden. And we give that to worms and they turn it around and make it into very good compost, very, very, very highly nutritious compost. So we use that. So we create kind of a cycles within the community. Then here's a good example of being sort of self-reliant and using our time better is growing potatoes. In the first few years, we grew potatoes in the field here, and the neighbor had a horse, so he would lend us the horse so we could plow the field, so we didn't have to get a horse ourselves and things. And then we grew potatoes, and then afterwards we decided, well, actually, we can buy potatoes for 1/10 of the price than growing them organically down the road. And we have there's so much to do in the community. I mean, it's actually, starting a community, it is very busy work. It's hard sometimes to juggle everything, to juggle your private life, your family, community, your business, however it is. So we had to manage our time well, So growing potatoes didn't really make as much practical sense. So we devoted our time more to the vegetable garden, because they're quite nutritious plant, and it's less work. Okay. So why the importance of organic food and gardening in the community? So the obvious advantage of growing your own organic food is the availability of fresh, nutritional vegetables and fruits, and that are soon eaten after picking. Many foods, they start quickly to deteriorate in vitamins and minerals once picked. So even organic foods bought at the supermarket, they're often harvested unripe and allowed to ripen during transport. Of course, if you're growing organic, it's obviously they're free of harmful pesticides and herbicides. So the main reason is for health, and another one would be for the health of the environment. These are all quite reasonably recognizable reasons for growing our own organic food. But something special happens in a community garden when we join together to work with the earth to plant seeds. I think many of you have community gardens and have worked together. When you care for the plants, you all work together in a garden. It creates, again, a bit like being self-reliant on a bigger way. Working together in a garden, you connect. You connect with each other. You connect with nature. It creates a bonding with each other. Quite often, for community gardens, I imagine there'll be, in the cities, urban cities, there's quite a disconnect between your life and nature and the world around you. You're disconnected from the cycles of the seasons, the cycles of the moon. You're disconnected from the life of the planet, really, around you. So for many people in urban communities, just going back to the garden is a way of, again, reconnecting with nature and reconnecting with those cycles. And that becomes healing. There is a healing nature to working, putting your hands in the earth, or connecting even electromagnetically with the earth. There's quite a lot of studies now even going with being barefoot, how that is extremely healing for the body, just connecting again magnetically with the earth. So in the same way, when you actually work with nature, there is a healing element to it. And this is one of my favorite pictures because it really shows the magic of nature, You get those special times where the light comes in. You got everything in full bloom, in full flower. And there's a sense of achievement that you can get from growing a garden like that. A sense of, it raises your self-esteem. It's quite an amazing thing. You've done it. And at the same time, you've done it with other people, not just you out there. You've actually grown together. You've made friends. You've discussed things, ideas with other people. You've shared the tragedies of something not growing. Okay, it's not so tragic, but still, if you're a gardener, it can be tragic. And so I think for a community, it is special to have some way of growing your own food. Whether it is a huge farm or a huge garden, something that brings the magic of nature into the community is necessary. And that sense of service, the community garden, for me, I think, I suggest, is a thing that is not done. You don't pay people to do it. It's something that you do out of service. You know? It's a place where we all get together. Actually, we in the mornings before we start work, I don't know, Findhorn did this as well. Findhorn, have you all heard of Findhorn? They're a very big community now, but they started off with just 2 people. Three, is it? Eileen and a baby, was it? Eileen, Caddy, and Dorothy, yeah. And I think it was Eileen, wasn't it? She was actually getting some guidance. She didn't know who from at the beginning. She was told to plant vegetable seeds in the most inhospitable area of northern Scotland that you can imagine, where people just said nothing would grow. Nothing would grow. And so she decided to trust this guidance that she was getting. It was actually voices she was getting, telling her to do these things and giving her guidance. So she started doing it, and she created a beautiful garden, a beautiful, magical garden. And she started to write about experiences, and this is how Findhorn basically started, through a garden. It actually started from someone planting seeds in a garden. And now it's a huge, hundreds of people living there, massive community, very successful, which has gone through many phases of community, from very small to big. So before we start working in the gardens, we get together like we do here in the center, and we have a little attunement. We actually have an attunement to the devas, to the nature spirits. You can call them nature angels, whatever. And that kind of, again, also emphasizes the sacredness of the garden, of the land, of the planet, of nature. We give thanks as well for all the bounties and everything that's possible through her. So this is a great way of then getting in tune with nature, and throughout the day we set that, and then we feel part. You learn to start feeling part of nature. You learn to listen more. You learn to get sort of intuition about what to do and what not to do. So if you're into this, if it's, you can even, ask Mother Mary to help you. It doesn't matter who it is really, but anyone who you feel comfortable with. So here we are, all helping each other, sharing in the exercise of working in the gardens. Here we're laying stone paths, and then this is also a good point. Community gardens, organic gardens, it's not all just about planting the seed and letting it grow. Some people, they may be more into actually beautifying it and building the paths and things. So it's actually a job for all. Someone might actually like weeding. I don't know why, but I actually like weeding. You love it, do you? Yeah, okay. Compared to someone who might like to doing the brickwork around the bed or weaving of sticks. There's beautifying an area. It really is a very fulfilling thing. And likewise in an urban garden. This, I thought, imagine urban gardens would I be right from your experience? It's because it's not, in our gardens we have a community already, and then that brings us together again and re-emphasizes our unity, our togetherness. In an urban community, I imagine you would get people who don't normally know each other, meeting each other, socializing, and different cultures. Yeah, you get an opportunity to meet different cultures from different cultural backgrounds. So here I've just listed a few of the positive effects of community gardens. We have, gardening together is an opportunity for socializing and making friends. Stress relief. Actually, a study has shown that, working in the garden is a great way of relieving stress and depression. It is good physical exercise, all that making beds and turning things around and bending and lifting. Skill development. There may be young people who are learning a new skill by working in the gardens. Food security and economic saving. That is quite obvious. Develops and enhances sense of community, sense of pride and self-esteem in creating beauty and in achievement, connection to the healing and magic of nature. And then, of course, all that hard work of working in the gardens and producing your own food. It's wonderful to eat it fresh from the plant, get high nutrition foods. But all that hard work can go to waste if you don't concentrate on food storage as part of your self-sufficiency, as your self-reliance. So in our community, we practice as much food storage as possible. So actually, we try to grow more storable vegetables like carrots, beetroots, potatoes we buy. And then what we can't store in a cellar, fresh, often we store it in sand, actually. It's a great way to keep it. And we sprinkle Agnihotra ash on it, which keeps it fresh for a long time. And then we also do a lot of jarring and pickling. Jarring of fruits, of apples, drying of apples. It's a big job. And again, it's a thing that the whole community gets involved in. Cutting, boiling the water, jarring, everything. So again, it's another way of getting people together in the community, making it feel, that we're all in it together. It's quite often, because we're juggling so many things as individuals, as I said, private businesses, family, what else? Everything. Then you can actually get, even in a community, you can actually start getting a bit lost in your own world, running around from one thing to the other. So these moments of working in the gardens together, of storing, preserving food together, are moments, singing, music, all these things are moments where we all bond and create that sense of community. And it's a very important fact of a healthy community. And then, very important is now the production of seed banks. Many of the seed companies are now being bought, been bought out, and they're owned by the same seed companies. And so that biodiversity in variety is being lost. I don't want to get into the politics of things, but control of food supply is a big control. So having your own saved seeds, is really a statement of independence. It's a statement of independence because if a farmer is not able to, if a farmer doesn't save his seed, he doesn't have seed for the next year. And again, we may be able to now go to shops and buy seeds, but the varieties that are out there are not as nutritious as they used to be. There are heirloom varieties which were older. The modern seeds, the modern vegetables, were actually grown more for appearance, for the way they mature, they ripen, because they want to be picked green, and then they ripen during transport. So a lot of that nutritional and actual health value of the fruit plant has actually been lost. So heirloom varieties are actually more nutritious. Heirloom, old varieties that were used maybe 50, 60 years ago. So forming seed banks and sharing seeds, again, is a great way to make networks between one community and another community, between one farm and another. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about the importance of the herbal garden as well, and herbs in our community. I think one point I'm trying to express is that growing your own food, growing your own herbs is a way of claiming a bit of your independence from being from from the world, from let's say, from supporting systems that aren't very ethical, let's say. So here we grow our own medicinal herbs at the Eco Village. And if anyone's interested, you can actually learn just simply, if you live in the countryside, just walking around. Now there are such good books now with color photographs of herbs. And I would really recommend, if someone has a slight interest in what's growing around you and how to use what is growing around you, just walk around your land and find out what there is there. You know, find out, identify the plant. Always identify the plant, because you do not want to eat something you're not meant to, and just see how it can be used. If it can be used medicinally, can it be used as a food? The herbs also we dry and store for the year. And we all use herbs in the community for treating common diseases and ailments. We make teas, we make creams as well, tinctures. We infuse oils for massage and for muscles, for wounds. So not having to depend on the pharmacy for medication is quite empowering. And then you have an opportunity also of treating yourself holistically. Again, you're connecting with nature. You're actually healing yourself with what nature is giving to you. And, you know, on top of all that, it's a great way of feeling resourceful. You know, your nature, the American Indians say that for every disease that comes, there's always a plant growing nearby, appearing nearby for you to use, you know. So it's a great way of getting to know what grows around you, connecting with nature. And as a community, health, all this comes together as a package. Growing nutritional food organically and growing your own medicinal herbs is a package. You know, food is your medicine, is what Hippocrates has said that thousands of years ago, and it applies as much today, if not more today, than it does before. I mean, a long-term use of chemically produced foods will ultimately break down your body. So a healthy community is a happy community. So eating good food, growing your own food, nutritional food, organic food, growing your own medicinal herbs. When there is someone who has a big sickness in the community, it's actually quite a drain on the resources, because that person has to be looked after. It takes away from other jobs that need to be done. And you know, there are studies now done in prisons and in schools that have shown how a diet changes the emotions and the functioning of the person. There was a prison in America where the diet was completely changed to fruit, no sugar, organic produce, and instead of the wardens having to be, you know, extra care, instead of the levels of violence that were there before, and the wardens being terrified of their lives a lot, violence dropped down to almost zero within a few months. And likewise, in the school, they took away the vending machines that sold all the chocolates. You know, they took away all the juices, the sugar juices, and they started supplying fresh fruits. Daily at that school, a teacher was being threatened and attacked. They were flunking all their exams. That means failing all their exams. So again, within a few months, all the violence had disappeared. There was no threats to the teachers, and the exam results vastly improved. So there's a direct correlation between what you eat and how you feel. And in a community where we're all living close together, and we're all sharing our lives together, how we feel has an immediate effect on the next person, you know? So although we may not think some of these things may not be so important, for a successful and happy community, the health of the individuals creates a much easier atmosphere and interrelation. something's happened. So these are just some examples. So just some of the workshops that we give, making some preparations of the herbs that we grow and collect from the wild. We also collect quite a lot of food from the wild, actually, wildcrafting, which is becoming more and more popular. Dandelion leaves, nettle leaves. These wild foods are very, very, very nutritious. And then on top of that, as part of the our self-reliance, we have cows in the community, apart from producing the cow dung for the garden. In the past, right now they're not producing milk, but in the past they produced milk, which we turned into cheese, we turned into paneer as well, yogurt. One cow can produce, 30 liters a day, so it's quite a lot. For some people, a small community may be interested in goats, which will produce less milk, more manageable, and not need so much land. A cow needs quite a lot of land to graze and to live on. So that's also something in. And as Karina was saying, we all practice ahimsa, which is non-violence to our animals and people. So part of also of our community food self-sufficiency is the orchard. We juice the apples, we dry them for later use. They get very sweet and very tasty for that. All our apples, most in our area, a huge area around Poland, apples are very hard to grow without being hugely sprayed. They're one of the most sprayed fruits now around. I think you were saying you had problems with flies, Slavo, no? Yeah, and that's also the same in Poland. And then also when we had an early frost once, late frost, all the apple growers around here lost a large percentage of their apples, and we had a very, very big harvest. The reason for that really is because of the practices that we're putting into place. We're using Agnihotra and the preparations that we make with Agnihotra ash, which is we mix it with water and we spray it on the trees, and we also spray it on the plants and animals. And just the atmosphere itself creates an atmosphere where nature is in balance. When you have imbalance in nature, that's when you get disease and plagues coming in. So if you can create that balance, then everything is going to grow more better, and there'll be no plagues like that. Say that again, sorry? Yeah. More resistant. Yeah. Yeah, this is a very old orchard, so for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The orchard was very old and neglected for maybe 15, 20 years. So we slowly had to bring it back into productivity. And in other ways, so, a community has to, I'll talk about it later. So here also we show the bees that you've seen in the video. It was incredible when we first got the bees, maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago. The orchard produced fruit. Once we got the bees, the orchard produced huge amounts of fruit. I mean, just the work that they did, the bees do, it was very clear to see. So that's part also of our sustainability and helping the environment is having a bee colony in our community. Also, we try and find a balance of the health of the bees and also taking some honey. So it's a fine line sometimes. A lot of people in our area, beekeepers, more commercially minded, which they take a lot of the honey and then feed them sugar water. which if it's necessary, of course, you do that in a bad winter and stuff, but sometimes it's to the death, you know. We have to create strong genes of bees now because so many bee colonies are dying. So part of that is allowing them, bee practices that allow them to be as strong as they can naturally, not always with us feeding them and giving them antibiotics and things like that. So I enjoy beekeeping a lot. I could go on for hours, but I'll go on now. Next thing. Yes. Well, there's one disease that's called Varroa, or Varroa, depending where you're from. We have in the past used a fumigation to do it because it's such a bad disease that nothing was working. Now I haven't used it, and I've been putting copper. Someone else in France told me about it. Putting copper in front of the entranceway, just like a thin thing of copper. And the theory is that when the bees walk across the copper, they collect copper ions. And the Varroa doesn't like it. And I'm trying that this year to see how it is. From what I can see from our bees now, the incidence of Varroa is very small. I see that on a few bees, but not very many. So yeah, it helps. Another thing you can do if you are prone to a lot of Varroa is spraying water around the beehives, which has been infused with chili, strong chili powder. And the Varroa mite doesn't like that. Yeah. So part of our sustainability is and self-sufficiency is having a low impact, of course, on the environment. We try and tread lightly on the earth. So, as many communities do, we use building practices as natural and ecological as realistically possible. So here we have an example of, this is a clay and straw bale house up here. That's been in the making for about 5-6 years. Actually, I live here with my wife and 2 children in the bottom floor, in the first floor, and we're working upstairs, finishing it. This year we'll have it finished upstairs there. And this is just showing you some of the techniques. We got the wood from the forest here, just in there. And then we had workshops as well to help us do the clay work. But we've got some professional builders who do clay houses to do the wood structure as well. It's a bit of everything. And then most of the other houses are wood, made from wood and natural insulation. I love working with clay. It's a really forgivable material. You don't have to be such an expert. You know, you can make mistakes and correct it. You can make it wavy as you like, and it can look beautiful. It does come from the earth around my house. Luckily, we have very clay. Well, luckily for building, we have clay soil. Unfortunately for gardening, it's hard, but it's good for building. And there are so many techniques that you can use with clay. It's actually quite, there's no one technique. It's actually that you basically see where you live, see what's available locally, and there'll be some way that you can use the clay, whether it's clay and wood chip, because you live in a forested area where there's lots of wood chip, or clay and straw because you have large field area and straw is quite cheap. It was an old picture that you saw before. This is a newer picture of the clay house up there, and these are the internal walls at the bottom where we were using different techniques. This is light clay and straw for the inside walls, and wood chip and clay for the inside walls with wood lathe. And we tried different techniques. This is very strong wall for those who are interested. Very strong, but quite labor intensive. This is also strong, perfectly strong enough, and faster and easier to do, I found, than that kind of wall. So me and some other people who come and help, I've been building this house for a few years now. Once you move into a house, finish your house before you move into it, because once you move in, you don't really, you're already happy there and you don't really want to do too much work. And these are some of the other examples of our sustainable housing. These 2 houses here were actually in another part of Poland, maybe about 30 kilometers away, and the other one was about 50 kilometers away. these are traditional log houses that we have in Polish area. And they were taken up, transported and put up here. So which is actually a very good way if you don't have a big economy for starting a community, this is actually a very good answer to that. This house here is the original house when the community started. There was only one house there, and that was the log house there. Had no bathroom, no running water. Upstairs was a hay loft. And this house here is actually a mobile home, Dom Holenderski, so it's got wheels underneath. And when I first came here to Poland, I lived in a house like this, 8 meters by nearly 3, 250, 260. I lived there for, I can't remember now, 7 years maybe, with Asha, my wife, and a child. And it was the best thing ever. It was really good. It was really good. Because when you have a community, this is a great way to start. If you don't have housing and you're a young community with not much money, this is one solution to maybe creating a house for yourself quickly. We just put a wood structure around it, insulation and desky boards. And it was insulated. And that was fine. You just need a small heater in there, and it heats up very fast, and it was great. And you may think it's very cramped, but when you're in a community and you have a communal land, actually you don't get that feeling of being in a small space, because you walk out and you're immediately in fields, you're in a garden or whatever, and it was fine. So these are all very sustainable models of building houses in harmony with nature. And then, as I said, self-reliance, the model for self-reliance communities then implies that we do what we can to grow our own food, produce our own energy, and create an economy for ourselves, be economically sustainable, self-sufficient. The economy allows us then to bring in money, to be able to buy the things that we lack, and services and also maintenance. So here is an example of how, as individuals and also as the foundation, we make money for ourselves. We do these handmade dolls at the bottom. I don't. This is Asha's and Parvati's crafts business. They make these handmade dolls. They're really cute. Up here, we sell through the internet and through people products that we have locally made. These is my business. We sell these pendants, jewelry, essential oils, healing oils. And then a big part of the foundation is supporting the foundation is Agnihotra. And believe it or not, one of the ingredients of Agnihotra is dried cow dung. So those cows that you saw there are actually generating an income for the community as well. We dry it. We generate income as well through selling some surplus vegetables. There aren't very many, to tell you the truth. We use most of it and store most of the rest. We make medicinal herb teas and creams at the bottom. That's some of them. Well, I can make a big container of one of the teas that we have, if you like, and you can taste it. Of course, honey production, and up at the top right, that's us growing microgreens. Do you know about microgreens? Yeah. No? Microgreens, you have sprouts, which is, sprouts is when you're growing it in water. You drain the water and it's not growing in any medium. It's just the wetness, the moisture, and that germinates the seed. And microgreens is actually when you're growing plants in soil, only to a certain height, to a certain level. And they're very nutrient-packed, very nutrient-rich. And you can get a harvest every, I can't remember now actually, every 2 weeks, 10 days to 14 days. Of these things. So we had a business starting, we were doing it for a couple of years, where we cut the microgreens and we sold it to restaurants and individuals. And then, we have to look to the future. We've been a community now then for 15 years, quite Karina said, 11 people and four children. And now it's going to be sort of a next phase. We can feel there's an importance now to move into a next phase of the community. So we are looking, we just broke ground on building this building now 2 or 3 days ago. It's just starting building the foundation of it. And we're looking now to build a center. We're calling it the Center of Light. In the center, there'll be a workshop space about this size, guest rooms where guests can come and stay to experience our community. They could come as well for therapies and for healing. We'd also have an arts center down below where we would be doing painting, art, ceramics, children as well. So everything is geared up then to do workshops, to give talks, for guests to come and stay. So that would also be a sustainable way for the community to make an income, to share what we've learned, for people to come and experience a community life, like that. So this is the next evolution that we feel is of our community. We have enough funding for the basement, for the foundation in the basement at the moment. We have 3 months to come up with the rest of the money for the rest of the foundation work. So I'm very interested in any fundraising help. We are, we're on the deadline now, so we do. Any help that we can have later will be great. Any ideas? Let me see. I think that's about it. I mean, for self-sufficiency, self-sustainability, there are numbers that you can throw around about how much land you need to be, let's say, as 80% self-sufficient. They say for a family of 4 in good land, you need about 7,000 meters squared, 0.79, rough 7 hectares. And that would be enough to grow grain, vegetables, fruits, berries for a family of 4. So if you can imagine a community of 10 people, well, let's say times it by 3, 12 people, that's about nearly, let's say 3 hectares of land to be able to be self-sufficient of just farming that. Yeah? So it's quite a lot. There are ways of being more self-sufficient to increase growth by more intensive ways of planting in different levels, ground level, medium level, high level, and forest gardening. Forest gardens are a great way of having permanent gardens around your house or something, or land that's not necessarily the vegetable garden, but land that may be between houses, just around the locality nearby, not the pastures for the garden, for the cows, sorry. Then that land can be used to be productive as well. You grow certain varieties of trees, kiwi vine that will grow here. You can grow schisandra berries, goji berry. There are perennial vegetables that you can grow, and all these can become part of your daily food source. I think I've touched on most of what I want to share with you. Just, I think energy and heat. As a community, the energy part for our community is probably the most difficult that we've tried to solve. It only changed, I think, 6 months ago, or maybe a year ago, where in Poland, if you wanted to produce your own energy, you couldn't sell it back to the grid. That's what people do normally in Germany. I don't know about here in Slovakia and Czechia. So any excess electricity that you produce, you sell back to the grid, and you get some money back for that. And that goes to, is that right? Yeah, some. You meant to get more than actually it costs, but I don't know. And that's some way of counteracting the cost, the initial cost of setting up the system. In Poland, if you wanted to do that until about a year ago, you had to get the same license that an electric company had to be able to do that, to sell the electric back. So that's only recently changed. So now there's a big influx of people, of solar energy, and people getting solar panels. And there are grants arriving now to be able to help people, individuals, privately, to do that. But our focus now, all our economy and focus is going into the center of light. So our long-term vision is to also have this building fully independent from the grid, photovoltaic and whatever, maybe windmill as well. And then our individual houses, either connected, we don't know yet, either connected to that or individually separate. Connected makes sense because then we share the costs. Right. And heat, in our community, the most sustainable way for heat that is not so electronic that we have to maintain, make sure it doesn't collapse and stuff, is wood heat. It's a big forest area, so we use wood to heat our houses. So, as a community, we've tried to be as self-sustainable as possible, to walk lightly on the earth. And I think that's what we all want to do here. If there are any questions now, I think that's the end of my talk. If there are any questions that you have, I'll see if I can answer them.